Joel Miranda was 12 when the lights went out. The first time.
I remember a number of times where the electricity went off and we called my mom and she said, "Oh, I was supposed to pay the bill today."
He grew up here in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
For a while, my father was the only person working with 6 children.
Depending on how you see it, what happened to Miranda 2 decades ago was either a crime punishable by years in jail or a desperate act by his parents to keep the lights on. Maybe both.
I believe my parents didn't know that there was anything wrong with this. My mother would find a way to pay. That could only happen for so long before, it got cut off again and again. And so we then put it in someone else's name.
Put the bill in someone else's name. His parents abandoned their account and actually opened a new account in Joel Miranda's name. He was 12 years old at the time. Did you inherit debt?
I did. And I knew I was inheriting debt at some point. I was a teenager and we needed the lights on.
Joel is one of an estimated 400,000 Americans who, as children, had their identities used by adults. By some estimates, nearly a quarter of cases involving identity theft in minors are linked to utility bills and family members.
At times there was an electric bill in my name.
Miranda says his family's bills just kept piling up.
I know that at some points it was in the thousands. And again, out of necessity, right? I mean, I can't stress that enough, and I hope that comes across. And it's done, and it's done to help the family.
Miranda's problem started about the same time states began deregulating energy markets. It was an attempt to keep retail energy prices low, but it didn't work out that way. In fact, government data shows in the last 17 years, retail prices in deregulated states rose far faster than in regulated ones. It wasn't just prices that increased. The number of utility companies also jumped, giving customers more ways to get in trouble. Denise Fairchild runs an organization that works to make sure people can afford energy.
I'm not sure if the utility companies know. They know that they're getting their bills paid, and they know when bills aren't paid, they will shut off the utility services. I don't know that they understand what families have to do to survive.
Utility companies, they have the ability to screen new applicants to see if they're children or adults, but many just don't. That's how Keisha Bush's mother did it. She put utility bills in Keisha's name. At the time, Keisha was only 16.
I also thought, well, if we get to start over, the previous bill kind of got out of hand and it kind of, it escaped her. But maybe if we started over fresh, she would be able to keep up. Sometimes you think maybe the person just needs a reset. Sometimes people think they just need a reset. If I can just get rid of the debt that I have now and start over without the burden of it, everything will be fine and things will be better. But that's not the truth. It's not. And then, there was a bit of disappointment because it wasn't just in her name, it was in my name.
The practice is so common that 5 states are taking a really strong stance against child ID theft. Indiana goes a step further. If in that state you use the identities of your children or dependents to commit fraud, you face a far harsher penalty than if the victim were an unrelated adult. All these laws, however, only address one side of the problem. Cybersecurity expert Robert Siciliano says it's not worth it to utility companies to pay more for detailed background checks on every new applicant because most monthly bills are rarely more than a few $100s.
There's a cost-risk analysis as to whether or not they want to dig deeper to identify and authenticate whether the social matches up with the age of the actual applicant.
And in the meantime, the person bearing that risk is the child.
The child's always at risk.
Making matters worse, Social Security numbers are a sort of accidental national ID. They were designed to track wages for retirement benefits, not biographical information. Al Jazeera contacted all 3 major credit rating agencies. Equifax was most direct, writing in part, the date of birth age is not necessarily part of the credit file. A more in-depth credit report does not exist. That means a child born right now could have a light or gas bill put in his name within a few weeks. Legally, victims of ID theft don't actually have to pay bills racked up in their name, But many child victims, the people who inherit utility debt, don't see it that way.
Why didn't you fight it? Why don't you say, I was too young, clearly this wasn't me?
Well, because the name on the bill was me, and it was done to help my family.
Keisha agrees. She also knows how difficult it was to clean up her credit history and shake free from debt, which, while in her name, didn't really belong to her.
Nobody's gonna forgive you for that. Not in this world.
I want to say it took me 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years, because I was fixing my own debt. I was fixing this debt that was following me. It's a common practice, and we don't often talk about it because it's also not something we're very proud of. But it is how we survived.
Survive the pressures of soaring utility bills, shrinking incomes, and the desire for a second chance.